My name is Christian. I used to be Mr. Christian. Now I'm just Grandpa. And more often, I'm nobody. I live on the outskirts of town, in an old, creaky house where the wallpaper peels off like skin from a dried wound. Once this place was my pride and joy. I used to cover the roof with my own hands, pour the foundation, plant chestnut trees in front of the porch. Now it's just a memory of the man I used to be. The windows are frosted with time. The doors are creaking like my joints in the morning. My children, they live in the center, in glass and chrome, in success and oblivion. My son is a manager of a large company. My daughter is a doctor. And me? I'm just background noise in their lives. I don't ask for much. Just a call once a week. A cup of tea when they have time. But lately they never have it. My grandchildren don't look me in the eye at all. They're always on their phones. My voice to them is the noise of the TV in the background that no one listens to. I wake up every day at 6:30. I've been used to it since I was a manager. Once my word was law. They listened to me. I made decisions that changed the course of events. And now I'm sitting in the kitchen, looking at the kettle that's slowly boiling, and thinking, how much longer can this go on? When my day is no different from the previous one, it's not life. It's a faded film. They avoid me in the store. The saleswoman, a young woman with long fingernails, always speaks through her teeth. If I ask her something, she sighs so loudly that she feels ashamed even for being alive. In the hospital, it's a tragedy. To them, I'm just another old man complaining about life. They don't see me as a person. Yesterday, the doctor said, without looking me in the eye, "Well, what do you want at your age?" I wanted to answer, "Respect. At least a little respect." But I just nodded. My room is my kingdom of solitude. Books on the shelf that I've already read twice, a diary on the bedside table, the smell of mothballs and old age. I've gotten used to this smell. Sometimes it feels like the smell of an invisible burial. I'm being buried alive. Slowly but systematically. I don't cry. Tears are a luxury I no longer have. But I feel something rotting inside. Not physically. Psychologically. Like rust. The looks they give me. Silence after my good morning. Forgotten birthdays. An empty mailbox. Even the machine at the pharmacy doesn't give me a check. Maybe I'm really transparent? Every evening I sit by the window. I smoke my only cigarette a day. The doctors have banned it, but they don't care, and I don't care anymore. I look at the street, at the people passing by my house. They laugh, run, discuss something. And I realize, for them, I am just an element of the landscape. Like an old lantern that has not been lit for a long time. I started writing. I don't know why. Maybe to keep from going crazy. In my diary, I record who didn't greet, who forgot, who offended. At first, it's little things. But as I go on, these entries start to resemble accounting. It's as if I'm recording debts. Or maybe that's how it is. Once, in my distant youth, I was completely different. But more about that later. Because now I'm different. Lonely, quiet, and angry. I was someone. Sounds corny, right? But I was. My past is not just a chronology of events. It is the iron with which I forged myself. I was born in a difficult year when bread was still bought with coupons, and warmth in the house was not an automatic convenience, but the result of my own labor. My father drank. My mother was silent. My childhood was not warm, it was a challenge. And I accepted it. Addiction. Yes, I went through it. My youth was not perfect. Alcohol became my friend before I learned to love. But I broke free. Not for myself, for those I wanted to protect. I drank and then I stopped. Once and for all. There were no relapses. Only the bitter aftertaste of shame. But that's what taught me endurance. Firmness. Control. I built a business from the ground up. Not from scratch, from a deficit. I took out loans on my word of honor. I worked until I lost consciousness. They cheated me. I got back up. They stole from me. I started over. I missed my children's birthdays and didn't go to their school performances. It hurt, but I believed that I would make up for it later. I was preparing a world for them where they wouldn't have to struggle like I did. I promoted my employees, trained them, and helped their families. They called me the father of the factory. I knew the name of every security guard, driver, and cleaner. I was tough but fair. They feared me and respected me, especially respected me. I remember one spring, we were opening a new workshop. I was standing with a microphone, wearing a suit I had bought in Poland. My daughter was holding my hand, still small, with a bow in her hair. "Daddy is the boss," she whispered proudly to the other children, and I believed they would remember me that way. Then came the losses. My wife. She died young. Cancer. I left everything and was with her until the last day. That's when I learned to be silent instead of speaking, to cry without tears. The children didn't see. I had to be strong. When everything fell apart, the business was sold, the factory was bought out, I gave away almost everything. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to protect them. I thought, they will remember. They will appreciate it. But gratitude is a fragile currency. It quickly depreciates in a world where you are judged not by your actions, but by how much you can still give. They grew up. My daughter moved away. My son built his own company. With my acquaintances, by the way. But now I am just a shadow to him. His phrase, "Dad, don't complicate things," cuts like a knife. My grandchildren don't want to hear about the past. They call me old school. They joke. But I remember every moment when I sacrificed myself for them. It hurts. Not my back, not my knees, those are trifles. It hurts here, inside, in the emptiness that grows every day. I avoid mirrors, not because of old age, but because of my eyes. They are not mine. They contain silence, betrayal, and something else. Something dark. I still keep the watch my colleagues gave me for my 50th birthday on the shelf. The engraving has worn off. But I remember, for dedication, for dignity. Sometimes I think, how ironic. They gave me a watch and then stole my time. My past was my armor. Now it's like a stone around my neck. Because no one wants to hear about it. No one wants to see who I was. To them, I'm just an old man who hasn't been taken by death yet. But I see everything. And I remember everyone. Especially those who have forgotten me. When pain lasts for years, it ceases to be pain. It becomes background noise, like the humming of an old refrigerator in the corner. At first it's annoying, then you stop noticing it. And only when you turn it off do you realize how much it was drowning you out. I live with this background noise, every day. It all starts with little things. My son only calls when he needs something. Information, a contact, advice. My voice on the phone is like an old office to him. Give me what I need and go away. My daughter is still polite, but behind her politeness there is a distance, like thick glass. Dad, I'm very busy. Dad, later. That later has become an endless corridor where I stand and wait for the door to open. But it doesn't open. My grandchildren, they are already teenagers. They listen to music I don't understand. Speak words that sound like slang from another planet. I try to talk, they interrupt me. And recently, when I remembered how their mother was little and we went to the circus together, my grandson waved his hand. Grandpa, enough of these fairy tales. And these fairy tales hurt more than swearing, because they erase reality, as if my memory is unimportant. And the hospital? That's a different story. Last week I felt sick. Pressure. My heart was tight. I went to the clinic. There was a line. I waited. The doctor was a young man about 30 years old, looking at his computer. I tried to explain my symptoms. He didn't look up. Well, what do you expect at your age? It's normal. Normal? For me? For a man who managed hundreds of employees? I am a normal patient who can be sent home with pills. I barely managed to keep myself from banging my fist on the table. But I restrained myself. Because I already know. The anger of an old man is just a joke to young people. But the most painful thing is the little things. The last time I went into a store, I dropped some change from my wallet. The coins rolled across the floor. I bent down to pick them up. People walked around me as if I were an obstacle. One girl even smiled crookedly. Grandpa, maybe you should stay at home? I heard that. I hear everything. I remember. In the evenings, I keep a diary. At first, it was just notes, blood pressure, pills, weather. Now it's names, dates, details. My grandson said lies. I wrote it down. The saleswoman threw the change at me without looking me in the eye. I wrote it down. The doctor waved me off. I wrote it down. My son didn't call on my birthday. I wrote it down. I don't know why, but these pages are starting to look more and more like a report. I even drew lines, fault and consequence. I'm scared of how neat it looks, but when I write, my hands stop shaking. I feel in control, and it's a strange but pleasant feeling. Something happened recently that has been bothering me. I went out into town. I bought bread and milk. My hands aren't what they used to be. It's hard to carry bags. 2 young men were walking in front of me. I asked, "Please help me carry these." They looked back. They looked at me. One of them laughed. "What? Grandpa? Hire you?" And they walked away. I dropped the bags. The bread fell into a puddle. The milk spilled. I stood rooted to the spot and watched them. There was something in my chest that felt like a rupture. Not physical, emotional. And at that moment, fog. My vision blurred, as if I were looking through dark water. I couldn't even hear the noise of the street, only my own breathing. And then something rose up inside me. Old, dark, forgotten. Something I had once hidden in a distant corner of my consciousness when I swore I would never be like that again. That evening, I came home a different person. My house was quiet, but the silence was not empty. It breathed. There was power in it. Not a cry, not helplessness, power. And then I realized I would no longer be a victim. Now I would play my own game. I didn't sleep that night. The house was quiet, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. It sang. It sang me a song I had long forgotten. Not a lullaby, but a march. Cold, clear, with an echo of steel. I sat by the window in the dark and listened to it speak to me. You're still alive. They haven't broken you. They just don't know who you really are. I stared at my hands for a long time. Old, covered with veins like dry branches. But these hands once held the collars of people who challenged my principles. They signed agreements, conducted negotiations, and took away the right to lie from those who were used to living off others. I knew how to win, and I learned to wait. They think that old age is helplessness, that years are a flaw, but they are wrong, because with age comes the most valuable things, patience and memory, and also the ability to see through people. And I saw everything I needed to see. My son is pretentiously polite, but in reality he is angry that he cannot control me. He lives under the illusion that he achieved everything himself. He does not know that the first 5 agreements were signed only because they saw my surname. My daughter has escaped into a world of sterility. She is afraid of weakness because she saw me crying at her mother's bedside. My grandchildren are a reflection of their indifferent upbringing. It is not their fault that they have become mirrors of emptiness, but they are part of the system. And I decided, I will show them all what pain is, not with screams but with my mind. Not with revenge, but with retribution. I opened the drawer. There was an old notebook lying there. I hid the contact book under it. An old one, the kind where numbers weren't stored in the cloud, but written by hand. I flipped through the pages. Alexander Litvinenko, a former contractor, now runs a small detective agency. Igor Savchuk, a former IT specialist from my team, a novice hacker whom I once saved from prison. Alina, a journalist who avoided dismissal after a scandal thanks to my intervention. These people owe me, and in such cases, debts are repaid not with money, but with services. I called them, not immediately, not abruptly. I started cautiously, with each of them in their own way. Hello, old friend. Remember how I helped you back then? I have a job for you. No begging, a deal. No, I don't need anything personal, just information. And the world began to open up again. I found out that my son was evading taxes, skillfully, but not perfectly. My daughter is keeping quiet about some patients because of pressure from management. Fear is her weak spot. My grandson secretly smokes weed, but considers himself part of the conscious generation. His school teacher is my former employee, and she remembers me as Mr. K. I started to weave, carefully, coldly, not with mud, with mirrors. They all considered themselves untouchable because I was just a grandfather, and I just watched, listened, and processed. Igor and I created a bot that sent anonymous tips to the tax office. Small ones, just hints, not for arrest, for alarm. I passed on a leak from the hospital to Alina through an anonymous source. She made a fuss in the media. My daughter is now not a star of the medical world, but a figure in an official investigation. I slipped my grandson an old flash drive. I just left it in a drawer knowing he would find it. It contained a video of him and his friend smoking together. Nothing criminal, but enough to crack the trust in his circle. I didn't touch them. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice or my weapon. I just reminded them who I am and what I remember. And the world around me slowly began to change. Their eyes changed. My son's voice became tense. My daughter's eyes showed fear when I looked at her silently. My grandson began to avoid me, but he no longer laughs. I regained my invisible crown, not as a dictator, as a player. And I'm not done yet. I feel strangely calm. It's as if someone has flipped a switch inside me. My fears, resentments, and tremors have disappeared. All that remains is silence and clarity. I no longer seek sympathy. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I want them to look at themselves, at their true faces, and understand what it means to ignore the one who gave them everything. I wake up in the morning as usual at 6:30. Only now my tea doesn't smell like loneliness. It smells like a plan. I feel every sip like a call to action. I write everything down in my diary. But now it's not just names and dates. There are diagrams, arrows, lines, red circles and black squares, people, events, weak spots. This is not an old man's diary. This is an operations headquarters. I've already deployed several parties. They don't understand yet that the game has begun. Because my game is quiet. No one will hear the shot. No one will see me on the news. They will simply collide with their own shadow. My son, who evaded taxes, has now received an anonymous warning from the regulatory authorities. It's not a disaster, but it's a cold shower. He called me the other day, his voice nervous. "Dad, haven't you heard anything about this?" I replied calmly, "No, son. What happened?" He fell silent. For the first time in his life, he didn't have a ready answer. My daughter, she has always been proud. But now her sterile world is cracking. Alina's article about medical violations spread across the internet. Her name isn't mentioned, but people read between the lines. And I know that her management now sees her as a potential scandal. She calls me, her voice quiet and timid. "Dad, do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I don't answer directly. I just listen. Let her find the answer herself. Because it's her mirror. My grandchildren, they were the most carefree. But now they look at me differently too. The older one, having accidentally found the flash drive, nervously deleted the files and then called me. "Grandpa, do you know anything about the flash drive?" I laughed. For the first time in many years, I laughed sincerely. "I know a lot," I replied. He fell silent. And for the first time in a long time, he looked at me without condescension. My revenge is not in destruction. I don't want to destroy their lives. I want them to see their own truth. I want them to know that old age is not transparency. It is experience. It is a weapon sharper than any knife. I use my old methods. Manipulation, psychological pressure, information. I leave no traces. Everything looks like a coincidence, like a chain of failures that no one will connect with me. I have become an invisible director, and the stage is their life. Sometimes I think, maybe I'm too harsh? But then I remember how I stood on that street with bags in my hands, how they laughed, how my bread sank into a puddle. And I realized, no, it's not cruelty. It's a lesson that someone had to teach them. Now they call more often. First out of curiosity, then out of necessity, finally out of fear. Respect appears in their voices. It may be uncertain, it may be grudging, but I hear it. And it's not anger that brings me satisfaction. It's justice. I remain in the shadows. I am not a hero. I am not a monster. I am a mirror they were afraid to look into. And I haven't finished my game yet. The game never ends. Because even after they fall to their knees and understand, I will not become the Christian I once was. He is dead. I am different, quiet, cold. Just sometimes at night, I still look at the old clock. I listen to it ticking. It used to count my working hours. Now it measures the beats of my retribution. Tick-tock, tick-tock, and I smile. I wake up again at 6:30 a.m., a ritual that no longer feels empty. Now this time is mine. Time for observation. Time for analysis. I put on the gray sweater my wife once gave me, sit by the window, and look out onto the street. People are rushing around as usual. But now they are different. Now I see more than they want to show. My children come more often. At first with anxiety, then with tension, and lately with silent respect. Not because of fear. No, they just felt that somewhere, deep down, I was not who I seemed to be. My son looks at me longer now. Sometimes I catch his gaze, full of inner dialogue. He wants to ask, but he can't. He doesn't dare. And I don't give him an answer, because the truth is not in words. My daughter came yesterday with a pie. She sat down silently and put her hand on my shoulder. We didn't talk about the scandal or the hospital. We just sat there. And in that silence was something that hadn't been there for years. Acceptance. My grandson, the same one who called my memories fairy tales, now sat across from me and asked, "Grandpa, how did you build that business?" It was the first sincere question in years. And I answered, without pathos, without moralizing, just man to man. And in his eyes I saw a spark. Respect. Finally, my life hasn't changed on the outside. I live in the same house. Everything creaks the same. But the world around me is different. They are different. And not because I broke them. No, I just took off their masks. I made them see themselves through me. Because old age is not the end. It is a mirror. And what you see in that mirror determines who you really are. People in the city began to take notice. The saleswoman in the store now says, "Good afternoon, Mr. Christian. How is your health?" And the doctor, the same condescending young man, stood up silently during my last visit and shook my hand. You're still in the game, right?" He said quietly. I just smiled. I am no longer alone. But I don't belong to them either. I am outside their worldview. And that is my advantage. I have learned not to forgive but also not to destroy. I have learned to give mirrors instead of punishment. And that is enough to shake the world. I don't seek applause. I don't expect gratitude. I'm not a hero. I'm just an old man who refused to disappear. I am no longer a shadow. I am a stone in the foundation. There are a few blank pages left in my diary. And on the last one, I wrote only one thing. The one who was considered forgotten always sees the clearest. I closed the notebook. I put it back in the drawer. And finally I exhaled. Not with anger, not with pain, but with dignity.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.